Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Horiot daf Vav. We're going to begin on Hamid base, 3 lines from the bottom. So we learned in yesterday's daf a three-way machlokas when it comes to the requirement of bringing the par helm dever shel tzibor in the event where the Beis Din made an erroneous psak, whether the Beis Din only brings the carbon, the par, whether the shvatim do but not the Beis Din, or both do. On this Tanya Rabbi Shimon Omer, what does the following pasuk mean? And we'll say the pasuk in its entirety. V'lachu par ben bakar, that they will take this par, umin chasoi, as well as the flour offering, which is sodas below b'shemen with oil, ufar sheni, and there'll be a second par, tika chachatos. There'll be a second one for a chatos. So what is that pasuk telling you? Imulamed shehem shnayim. So maybe it means you have to bring two cows, right? Two par. I thought we only had to bring one as a chatas and one as an oila. So what does it mean in this pasuk, which seems to imply that the second one is for a chatas? So you would think that it's allowed to be consumed, namely that they're allowed to eat from this carbon chatas. Sheni oila. It's secondary to the oila, okay? Uma oila lo nechelas. Just like when it comes to the carbon oila, we never obviously eat from the carbon oil; it's completely burnt. Vavam and aleph. Avchatas lo nechelas. So too over here, this particular type of chatas for avodah zarah, someone who worshipped avodah zarah based on the psat Beis Din, so you don't eat from the chatas. The kohanim don't eat from the chatas in that case. So this is from Sefer Ezra. It says those who came, the bnei hagoyla, from Golus, hikrivu oilos, they brought oilos, little Israel to Hashem. Parim shteim asar. It says that they brought 12. The pasuk says there was 12 parim that were brought. Al kol Yisrael, for all the Yidden. Elim tishim, there's 90 elim v'shisha kvasim, 6 kvasim. Shivim v'shiva tzipori chatos, 77 birds. Shneim asar hakoyel oil Hashem. And those 12 was an oil to Hashem. So how do we understand this pasuk? Hakoyel oil. So we say it's considered to be their own oil. Hakol oil sakadaitach after shachatus oil. Understand? It says beferish in this pasuk, yes, that some of them were oilos, but it also says sipuri chatos. So we mean they were all oilos. El hakol ki oyma oilo nechelas avchatos nechelas. So too, in this situation as well, even though it's a chatas, it cannot be eaten. It says Rashi, Lefi shahayu seirin shel tzibor, since this is the carbonos of a tzibor, hanisrafin, they get burnt up. Lefi technisu demin lefnai lefnim. And then it says, according to the Gemara in Zvachim, which we'll get to soon, parin hanisrafim, useirim hanisrafim, dehainu seirim v'azara of a chachamim de tzibor. So it's considered to be of the tzibor. So if it's a tzibor, so then the chatas is not consumed either. The Sanya, Rabbi Huda Eimer, al avodas kachavim havium, that they brought these karbonos because of avodah zarah, that they were oived avodah zarah, and therefore because of that's the reason why they bring these karbonos, and therefore because of that, the din is that even by the chatas also we don't eat it. Specifically, we're talking about in the times of Sidkiyahu, in which there was avodah zarah that was happening. Now, Bishlam Rabbi Huda, again, we had a three-way machlokus, exactly who has to bring the karbanos. So, according to Rabbi Huda, Mishkachas la Lohanish Maser Chatois, when it says that there was 12, so it could go in the Chatu Shnei Maser Shvatim. All 12 tribes sinned, and therefore you have to bring these 12 he-goats. Inami, the Chatu Shiva Shvatim, maybe 7 sinned, Vishara Inach Begreira. And as we said before, even in yesterday's daf, there's the din Greira, that even though half of the, or let's say 5 of the Shvatim didn't do an Aveira, nonetheless, they still have a Chiyat to bring the carbon just the same. So according to him, you could either say they all sinned, or even the majority sinned, and then the other ones have to bring it. And therefore, we can understand Parim Shneim Aser al Kol Yisrael. So we can understand again, and then Sipori Chatas Shneim Aser Hakol Oyel Hashem. Okay, so Rabbi Shimon Nami Mishkachas, so Rabbi Shimon said that the Beis Din also has to bring. So he'll say Mishkachas going the Chatu Echad Aser Shvatim. Maybe only 11 of the Shvatim sinned. Demaisu Echad Aser Seirim. So they'll bring 11. V'idach the Beis Din, and then the Beis Din will bring the other one. Which sounds like, according to this interpretation, he doesn't hold of Greira. Says Rashi, V'echad shehaviu Beis Din Horiot Beis. And Rashi says, Ben Rabbi Yehuda, Ben Rabbi Shimon, Ben Rabbi Meir, Hechi Karbi Hanu Chatois. Rashi says, how can you bring these Chatois? V'maisa Hanu the Chatois b'misikyo de havi Chatos shemesu balehen. So how could you bring them for them if they already died? So Chatos shemesu balehen, we say Lamisa Ozl. So we'll get to that. El Rameir the Emer Basin Mavin Vot Sibor. It's only the basin. Only one par is brought. So Shnei Masechim Shachas. How is it 12? So Kagain the Chatu Hadur Chatu V'Hadur Chatu Ad Triasu Zimni. So it's possible that they sinned 12 times, and therefore you're right. It's only the basin has to do it, but this happened 12 different times, and that's why it had to be done that way. Of course, that's a shtickle daichik. It was exactly 12 times that they sinned, but we could still potentially, even though it's a little shtickle daichik, but still we can answer him. Let's look at question 12. Sib Ezra Haboyim Mechashvi B'nei Goyla Hikribu Oylois L'Kei Yisrael Parim Shnei Maser. There was 12 parim. Al Mahik Rivu as Hakarbonos Halalu of Ketzad Kipru Hari Mazidin Hayu. Okay, so that we didn't do that one yet. Okay, so again the kash is you should only bring it. It was b'shaying, not b'mezid. So we answered part of it. Haboyim al voidus kochavim shas b'mezid kiyahu. That we brought it because in the b'mezid, because in those days they were oived avodah, so we brought karbanos. So now let's go back into the Gemara. Now, v'hamesi w'hu hanhu dechatu. Again, this is the kasha. They already died. So if they died, it's mesa shechatu ba'aleha, and therefore you shouldn't bring a carbon in that situation. So Amar Papa kigim erichata shemesu ba'aleha b'misa. You're right. Normally we do say that if the person who has a carbon, that because he sinned, he was going to bring a carbon chatas, then he died, we don't bring that carbon anymore. Hani mili b'yachid. That rule is only when it comes to a yachid who died, and that we don't bring the chatos. Avol lo but sibor l'fishein misa but sibor. There's no misa but sibor, which is an interesting concept. There's also a concept in business when it comes to like a publicly held corporation. It has unlimited life. So perhaps on some level it's similar to that. So therefore, even though we normally say Chatas Shemesa Baleha, in this situation, it doesn't make any difference. We're dealing with Tzibor, you can still bring. So Minole Rav Papaha, how does Rav Papa know this distinction? Is it because the pasuk says in Tehillim, it says Tachas Avoisecha, in lieu of your forefathers, Yubanech will be your children. Tashi Seimoi was Sorim B'chol Aretz, and that they'll be like placed as leaders on the land. So Yihachi Afil B'Yachinami. So if it sounds like that the child replaces the father, as though like okay, the father died, but then his legacy continues with the child, so then we should say the same thing when it comes to a Yachid. So we should also say Ein Misa B'Yachid, based on this pasuk. El Diyuka de Rav Papa. So how does Rav Papa understand? It's Mesir de Rosh Chodesh. When it comes to the carbon chatos that is presented on Rosh Chodesh, so that is what he's referring to. Says Rashi, V'hadilma ma'isel hu miYisrael v'yachar shnisral matrumas halishka. So it could have been brought already after the monies have been set aside. Yom Rachman ma'isel matrumas halishka. Abaham ma'isel hu miYisrael. Maybe someone who donated that, right, it's part of those monies, died. V'hanech defaishi heichi mesi. So the question is, how can you bring it? So therefore, because it's a raya, el shmami no chata shemesu baleha, but sibur karva. So that's the idea, because it's all sibur money. So therefore, we're not concerned about this one person who died, that all of a sudden the chatas doesn't work. Midami, you can't compare this to the sa'ir, the higo, this Rosh Chodesh was against the chatas. Dilma lo ma'isa mitzibur. Maybe no one died, right? How do you know definitively that someone died, and therefore we can learn out from here a raya? Maybe no one died, right? So, I mean, it's hard to understand that when no one ever died, but again, maybe if they die, maybe that is the din, right? Avol hacha vadi mesu. But in this case, there's no question, right? Because over there, okay, you have this money, these monies that are given every year. So maybe no one died this year. No one died in the past month since it has been collected. But when we're dealing with from the times of Sidkiyahu, so that was a very long time ago. And therefore, certainly, says Rashi, V'hacha dayrishel Sidkiyahu vadi mesu. It was a long time ago. It was a different generation. So there definitely have people that died. So you can't use it as right. All time Rapapa Mahacha. Because the pasuk says in Devarim, Kaper Lamcha Yisrael, it'll be an atonement for Ka'amcha Yisrael, Asher Padiso Hashem, Yal Titin Dam Noki B'Kereb Amcha Yisrael. You shouldn't have innocent blood among your nation. V'nechaper lehem hadam, and there should be a kapara. So on this, what is the drush over here? So Asher Padis Hashem Ruya Kaparazu. It's coming to tell us that it's really befitting this kapara. Says Rashi, this is referring to Egla Rufa, and should techaper al yotzim Mitzrayim. That should be a kapara for those people who should techaper. The Egla Rufa should be a kapara al yotzim Mitzrayim. Those who left Mitzrayim, even though they may have died already, right? As Rashi says, Alma in Misa Batzibor, but who I didn't with Darshal Sidkiyahu, the Africa, the Mesu, even though they died, Mischaprin Bahanu Chatos, so it's still a kapara. So that's the limud. B'nechsev Asher Padisa. So Midami Hasam Ku Isinun. All of them are around now. Says Rashi, Gabi Egla Rufa Kul Isnu B'chaim. They're all here. The Iker Ki Isa Egla Rufa Hani the Isnu Kaasya. Why do you bring an Egla Rufa? There was a person that died. We don't know who it was. We measure the city. So we say that it works. Obviously, that's a kapara for this person that died, who was murdered. But the main people are the ones that are here right now. That's really the purpose of the Egla Rufa, right? The Rashi says, "Umigu de mechapra achayim mechapra nami amesim." But since there's basically everyone's alive over here, so that's the reason why it works. In this situation, by the times of Sidkiyahu, they're all gone already. So therefore, again, it's not a raya. You're right. There were some that are still alive. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, as it's a very long pasuk in Ezra, it says V'rabim mahakohanim, and many among the kohanim and the Leviim, Barashi Havois, and the heads of the fathers, V'goimer, etc. And the pasuk continues, Ashero es habayis harishain. They saw the first Beis Hamikdash, biyostoi zeh habayis beinehem, boichin b'kol gadoil. They were crying. V'rabim b'trua b'simcha l'harim koil. They were raising their voice. So where it says, well, it sounds like, well, maybe there's actually some of them, Taka, are still here. Actually, there were some of them that were here. So where it says, V'dilma miyutan havi, v'lo rabim havi, right? It says, Rashi, Dilma miyuta de tzibur de b'aysheni havi. There's a small, minute of these people still around. V'havli chata shemesu, roiba lehavloi karva, v'achaksiv de karva. So again, it's maybe there's a small amount. So who says that should work? So again, quoting the pasuk, it says that the people from before cried. V'kol nishma ad limerachik, and they heard their voices were heard so far away. So again, v'hamazid and havi. What exactly is going on over here? So that's the explanation. The Gemara says, understand, they're mezidin, right? It says Rashi, darshal sitkia b'nei katlaninhu, v'lo b'nei karbaninhu. These were people that were killers, they were not good people, and they did things b'mezid. So how does this work at Bechlal? How could they have brought that in general? The answer is you're right. Normally, when it comes to a chatas, it's only did naver b'shaygig, not b'mezid. However, harasha haisa. This is an exception. It says Rashi, the afagav the havi mazid and havi mischaprin. They made an exception. Hakadam estabra. The ilu tema hakin. Don't say this. It says elim tishim v'shisha. Elim tishim. So it says in this pasuk. Let's get it. Elim tishim v'shisha. There was 90 elim, 90 rams, v'shisha kvasim, and 6 sheep, shivim v'shiva tzipori chatos, and 77 birds for a chatos. So, what exactly does that mean? Keneged me. Why are we bringing these particular karbanos? So we spent all this time darshaning 12, but how about all these other numbers? Where they come up from? So these amounts are just a harashah. Okay. So it's a raya because, like, where do they come up with all these numbers? Question 12. Now let's go to question 12. So again, this was because of the Avera of Avodah Zarah in the times of Sidkiyahu. And the question is, Aylu Charetz B'mez. And the answer Pashut is, Harashah Ha'isa, V'ayim Eschapin, Alpami Shahayim Azidin. That there was a kapara for them, even though they were b'mezid, so that's what we did. Tonabam. Meis echad min ha-tzibor. So let's say, so again, if a yachid dies, the din is that there's no chatas, right? You can't bring anymore. Instead, it goes into the kippah. Now, if let's say someone from the tzibor dies, so the din is chayavin, says Rashi. Going shahar based in. So again, you had this psaka based in the also tzibur al pihem. The tzibur followed suit based on their erroneous psak. V'hispikul havi ad shemes echem in a tzibur. So and then one person, let's say of God's Klal Yisrael, out of the majority of the people in Klal Yisrael died. So there's still a chiv of having to bring a par. Echem based in paturin. But interestingly enough, if let's say one of the people from Basin dies, so then in that situation you do not have to bring the par. It says Rashi, v'havi lochata shemes echem in a shutvin, davi kamesu mixas ba'aleha v'loi karva. So it's apparently, according to this, it's not the same thing as the tzibor, which we said. We said that ein misa b'tzibor. When it comes to a shutvin, no. And therefore, since Basin is like part of all partners, if you will, so if one of them dies, then that's it. Then the par is not brought. It's only if one individual dies, because we say in misa b'tzibor. Mantana, some Rav Chisda, Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav Yirmiyah, Amar Rav, it's Rav Meirhi. The Amar Basin Mavin v'lo tzibor. Who brings it? The Basin. And therefore, Hilchach Meis Echem in that tzibor. If someone from the tzibor dies in Chayavin, they still have to bring it to Hakim Kula Basin, because the whole Basin is still around, and since the whole Basin is still alive, they're the ones bringing it, so then that's fine. But Meis Echem and Basin Paturin the Habil Lachatish Meis Echem and a Shutvin Umishum Hachi Paturin. Okay, so Mask Rav Yosef, but no Rav Shimon. Why don't we say it's actually like Rav Shimon? Do you remember Basin Imat Tzibor? That who has to bring the par, not just the Basin, but also the tzibor has to do it as well. So Meisechem in a tzibor, if one person from the tzibor died, chayav and tzibor Meisen, just because of the svar we said before, that we don't constitute misa when it comes to a tzibor. However, Meisechem and Basin poitrin kidamrin lechatashutani. So again, maybe we're making a distinction. Not because, no one died, and who's the one's bringing the carbon? It's the Basin. So if someone from the tzibor died, it doesn't affect. Maybe really, we're talking about the tzibor also has to bring a par, and the whole point is that even though they have to bring a par, but we'll kick in the concept of emisa but tzibor. We don't say that when it comes to a shutim. The truth is that din also applies when it comes to a shutuf. And therefore, for that same reason, it shouldn't matter if one of the members of the Beis Din died. Also, you would still bring the par according to them. Therefore, you can't say it's like him. How do we see that he holds that? Let's say we're dealing with the par and the sa'ir, which are the two major parts of the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. They got lost. Says Rashi, so then you ended up taking replacements, and then afterwards, after all's fine and finished, you find those animals that you lost. So what do you do with that par and do with that sire? So says Rashi, Kulon Yemusu Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, again, the Hefrishan Achim Takne, Yemusu Kulon Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says they all have to die. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon, and Yiru. He says no, you should just let them graze. Why? Why don't let them die? It's considered to be like Chat Shmeisa Baleha. Because we don't apply that we don't apply that concept. Says Rashi, the par shel Yom Kippurim, danu par shel Aharon. This is the par of Aharon. Havichatas hashutvan. It's like a partnership. To kohanim eschaprim boy, v'ka'im Rav Shimon yiru. What does he say? Let it graze. Not the notion of because we're not talking about people who died, but there's another one of the 5 concepts, which we're going to see all of them in a second. One of them, in addition to the din of Mesa of Chatash Mesa Baleha, one of the Yabachatas that Kipru Baleha, that the Baal already achieved kapara. Like in this case, that typically we say the Lamisa Azla, that animal is going to go Lamisa. So why does he say Yiru in this case? Mishum, says Rashi, the Chatas Shutrus Lav Kachatas Yachid Damya, El Kachatas Sibur Damya. We only will say this din when it comes to a Chatas that the Baal received kapara that goes Lamisa, that's only by a Yachid, by an individual. But when it comes to a Shutif, or for a tzibur for that matter, according to this opinion, not just a tzibur, but also by a Shutif, that's the din. And therefore we'll let it graze. Says Rashi, "V'huadin ki meis echem in a shutvin." So too, if one of the partners die, the loy kachatas shemeisa b'leha damya, the chatas hashutvin hi ve'enu meisa. So we say we're going to compare, just like when it comes to, as we see here, that if you lost the animal, then you already achieved kapara. So Rav Shimon does not require you to kill the animal, but rather you let it graze. So why do you let it graze? I thought we say that when it comes to a kapara of a chatas shekipur baleha, that's lamisa, that's only by a carbon yachid. This is not a carbon yachid, because this is a carbon shutvis, because Aharon is a shutif together with the other kohanim who achieve kapara with these karbanos. So because of that, we can let it graze, because we make a distinction between a yachid and a shutif. So too, a shutif and a tzibor will also say the same din when it comes to chatash shemesa ba'aleha, that we're not going to have it killed, and you can still bring it. So Amali Rabbi Yosef Kohanim Ka'amrit, you're trying to prove by the carbon of Aharon that because the Kohanim also achieve kapara, they're like partners. What are you talking about? Shani Kohanim de Ikra Kahal. It's considered to be kahal. They're not partners. It's considered to be like a kahal bifnei atzmo. So it's like tzibor. So the reason why is because of ein misa b'tzibor, right? It's not because of shutvis. It's al tzibor. And again, we don't know what the din is by shutvis. Because the pasuk says in Sefer Vayikra, v'chiper es mikdash hakodesh v'es oyel moyed v'es mizbeach yichaper v'al kohanim v'al kol am hakahal yichaper. So it says this notion when we're talking about the kohanim of this notion of kahal. As we continue to bubble the base, el miyato nesi par b'hoyra. So if they follow the mistake of Beis Din, says Rashi, el miyata the kohanim ikur kahal lesu par b'hoyra. If you actually want to tell me that's true, that kohanim are mamish like kahal, right? And the question we said is one shaven ikri kahal. So these kohanim, they're considered to be kahal. So then, by their own, they themselves should have to bring a parhel of shel tzibor. V'chitem hachanami. Maybe that's true. So tfeilahu shvatim. So then we have a lot of shvatim. Says Rashi, Rav Shimon having yud gimel shvatim. It's actually 13. V'tana Rav Shimon omer yud gimel parim, par echad Par l'cholet shevet shevet, upar l'beis, then lo yahavi el yud beis shvatim. So that's really 12. But if you're going to say the Kohanim are like a shevet unto themselves, not like part of Shevet Levi, but they're a shevet unto themselves, even though they're not Levim, there's no Levim in that category. So again, that should be the case. But we don't say that. We don't really apply them like a Kahal. They're actually not considered to be a Kahal. They're not considered to be like a tzibor. How do we see this? Because the pasuk says in Bereshis, so it's going to be an inheritance forever. So anyone who has an achuzah, an inheritance in the land, kahal, will link in the word kahal. However, so the achuzas oilim is linked to the word kahal. So therefore, because of that, Kohanim are not considered, they don't have an achuzah, they don't have an inheritance. So therefore, because of that, they're not going to bring, they're not considered to be kahal at all. So, one second, im kain, chasu hu yibei shvatim. So in that case, then we don't have even 12, right? So we said, oh, there's 12 shvatim, but Shevet Levi is not inheriting, so then there should not be mechuyev because they're not considered kahal. Or Rabbi, Ephraim Menashe, Keruvim, Shimon, Yuli. So you're right. When it comes to Shevet Levi, the Kohanim, they would not bring a par because they're not considered kahal. However, when it comes to Ephraim and Menashe, we split them as two separate shvatim, and therefore, for that reason, we can still get to the magic number of 12. Okay, still Amarav of Haksiv, but the pasuk also says in Bereshis, it says those who will give birth afterwards, you al shem achem, they will be the name of like your brethren. Yikru b'nachal ascham will be their inheritance. So based on that pasuk, we say l'nachla hukshu. They're only compared when it comes to nachala. V'loy l'davar acher, nothing else. So again, why not two parim, should only be one, right? So the question again is, let's look at Rashi. The nachla hukshu Ephraim Menashe l'shmar shvatim. Ephraim and Menashe are only considered to be like separate shvatim only when it comes to their inheritance. Shiu noitlin menachla kashar shnei shvatim. V'lo b'davar macherim hukshu, nothing else. Aval ein maviin beis parim. They will not bring others. So it's kind of like split. They don't bring a par like the other shvatim, but they are like kahal that we don't kill the chatos. So we're going to get to that. But anyway, the point is that Ephraim and Menashe are like two shvatim regarding to the Yerusha, but they're not considered to be shvatim regarding the din of a par, that they wouldn't have to bring two, they would only have to bring one. V'lo v'chalukin b'degalim, we find that they are distinct when it comes to their flags. So kinachaltan kach chaniasan. Just like their nachal, so is their encampment. Kedei kavod l'degalim, in order to show respect. Says Rashi, Shiakov vinu chalkolhem es aretz, he divided up the land, but sivam heich yinu l'degleihem, and how to be able to have their flags and their positions. The Yaakov Avinu tikn lehem degolim v'chalkolhem aretz. It was Yaakov Avinu who established and did this for them. V'hachalukim b'nesim. They're also distinct when it comes to the Nesim, as we see in Parshas Nasai, that they brought their own karbanos. It's just to show respect in the Nesim. But again, really, when it comes to the par, they would only bring one par. They wouldn't bring separate parim because they're different shvatim. They're considered the same when it comes to that. Desanya Shlomo also Zaynime Chanukah. Shlomo Melech made 7 days of inauguration. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu do 12? I mean, obviously Moshe was before Shlomo, but what's the difference? The truth is, all we needed to do is 7 would have been fine for a week, and then after Vahibi Yom Hashmini. But he wanted to be able to show covet for each Nasi, and therefore that's the reason why Ephraim had his own day, and Menashe. Okay, so my Havua. So okay, at the end of the day, what's the deal? So let's go back into let's ground ourselves and look at Rashi. Ihavi davka hadi abai diamer dishamin le Rav Shimon diamer dechatas ashuftin enu mesa olav davka. Again, the question, as we said before with Rav Shimon, when we said ein misa but tzibor, and therefore because of that, tzibor can still bring a chatas, even though someone died or whatever. How about when it comes to partners? So Tashma decided Rav Shimon Omer, and again here's Rav Shimon jumps out. That's his name. Chamish chatos mesos. There's actually 5 different situations that when it comes to a chatas, for different circumstances, we're going to have the animal put into a keepa, if you will. So one is vlad chatos. One is if you have a chatas and it gives birth to that vlad. So that vlad, what do we kind of do with this vlad? So the din is that it's mesos. Number 2 is timuras chatas. If the person takes a carbon chatas and does a timur with it, says, I'm going to take the kedusha and put it onto animal 2. So animal number 2, in fact, does have kedusha, but so does animal 1. It doesn't lose it. So that timuras chatas, what do we do with it? So therefore, it's misa azul. Number 3 is v'chatas shemesa balveha. This is the one that we're going to focus on now. So again, if you have a carbon chatas and the owner died, so then in this situation, we do a carbon chatas is l'mesa. Number 4 is v'chatas sheschaper balveha, which again we also talked about, and then v'chatas she'aver shenasa. If you have a carbon chatas in which is supposed to be within a year, and then it ends up being you didn't bring it, and all of a sudden it's too old. Okay. So we are not going to mention Vlad Chatas B'tzibor, She'en Sibor Mafrish in the Keva. We don't mention anything about a Vlad of a Chatas when it comes to a Tzibor. Why? Because a Tzibor is not Mafrish a Nekeva. Says Rashi, She'ena Tamoitze carbon Sibor Shahayisa Ba Nekeva. When it comes to any carbon Sibor, interestingly enough, it's always a zachar. It's a male animal when it comes to a tzibor. However, it's only by a carbon yachid, so therefore it's physically impossible to come up with a case of vlad tzibor by vlad chatas by a tzibor, because the carbon chatas of a tzibor is always male, right? And okay, I don't want to get into the being politically correct in this generation. Okay, the animal's a male; it can't give birth. Okay, let me just say it that way. Why not? Can't you do a tamura on a carbon chatas of tzibor? No, she'in tamura b'tzibor. That concept of tamura that only works by a yachid, because it says in the pasuk lo yachiflenav lo yomir, which is a lashon yachid. It doesn't apply to a tzibor. The dinim of tamura, which you learn in the beginning of Masechtas Tamura and Daf Yud Gimel, that it only applies to a yachid. So again, as we said before, that third ruling doesn't apply when it comes to a tzibor. So out of these 5, there's no such thing as vlad chatas. There's no such thing as mesa baleha, and also there's nothing about timuras chatas. Those things just don't apply. However, when it comes to those other 2, it's possible, right? But I don't really know much what the din is when it comes to those. Okay. Because it is possible, obviously, that the animal can just get older, right? Tzibor's carbon chatas could get older. And it could also be that the tzibor received kapara. Like as we said before, you brought a carbon and got lost, okay, assuming it's a carbon tzibor. The case of Yom Kippur was a carbon shutfin, possibly by Aaron. So Yochimu, so you would think maybe by those 2 they should die, just like by a Yachid in those situations. So Amrit Yilmod Sosu Mina Mafurish. Learn that which is closed from that which is explicit. Mamatzinu Bivlad Chatas to Timuras Chatas to Shemesu Balveha. Those 3 things is only possible b'Yachid. So Devarim Amurim. Dafka there, biyachid devarim amurim, v'lo b'tzibor. So afshin eschaper balehem she'aver shenasa biyachid devarim amurim v'lo b'tzibor. So it's maybe these 5 dinim only apply to a yachid, to a yachid, and they don't apply to tzibor, because 3 out of the 5 definitely there's not even a possibility for it to be b'tzibor. So these other 2 can also probably not apply to a tzibor. V'chi done and ershim she'efsher. So it says, I understand. How do you learn Esher V'She'efsher? Those other 3 don't apply. Like a Zachar can't give, there's no such thing as Vlad Chatas but Tzibor. There's no such thing as Tamura when it comes to a Tzibor, right? And there's no din of Mace Baleha when it comes to a Tzibor. So how could you compare it? So Rav Shimon B'chad Makom Gomer. So Rav Shimon, from one place, he can learn. What exactly does that mean? So anyway, the point is that we could see these dinim are only by a Yachid and not by a Tzibor. And only Yachid, not Shutvin, right? As they can't bring, and also when it comes to Shufin, they can't bring a female carbon, so only by a Yachid. And Shutvin is like a Tzibor. And we don't kill a Chatos, rather it could be Makrivit, and so it's not like Rav Shimon. We again see that we compare Shutvin is we compare a Shutvin to a Tzibor. So again, apparently, according to Rav Shimon, we see again that a Shutef has the same din as a Tzibor, and not like a Yachid. And therefore, because of that, the din is we would not kill it, but rather we would allow it still to be brought. Okay, not the easiest piece, but I think we got through it. Okay, let's see a couple more questions. Question 13. Well, these are like easier questions for a hard piece. When it comes to Nachla, Ephraim and Menashe are the same for their Degolim, their flags, and Nesiim when it comes to their Karbanos. TA3. Le'inyan El Gimel Dvarim Ephraim Menashe Chashuvim Kishnayim. So again, we mentioned the three about Nachla, Degom, and Nesiim, but he adds another important piece. When it comes to Pariyom, Dever, Shel Tzibur, they're like one, and therefore only one carbon is brought. That's TA3. TB, let's see, did I get it right? Nachla, Nesiim, Degolim, they are separate as one regarding bringing the carbon. I'd write par, like each other Shevet does. Okay, that is correct. I actually got that one right. And let's see if I got it right on question